Welcome, all of you lovely people, to D&D Optimized, the show where each week we take a deep dive into one or two specific character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and we crunch the numbers and we theory craft and we do our best to try and make the character as powerful as possible for the role that you have chosen for it in-game. Welcome. If you, like me, enjoy thinking about and creating characters for Dungeons & Dragons almost as much as you enjoy playing the actual game, then welcome home. This show is for you. And so grab a flagon of your favorite beverage, pull up by the fire, and let's do some theory crafting. Thank you for being here. My name is Colby. Happy to have you, just in case of amnesia. Coincidentally, there is a fantastic college in New Hampshire somewhere named Colby College, and I don't know much about the school, but their merch is fire. So just a couple of housekeeping items today before we jump in. First, at my sort of suggestion with my little sliding into my DMs episode last week, a couple of people have put together a subreddit, and I would love it if you guys would go on there and use it and talk and theorycraft and continue the conversation. It's a great place to do so. Thanks to, I believe it's Kyle K. Mears and Querns, if I'm pronouncing that right. But the URL is reddit.com/r/DND optimized. So let's go and build a community. I think it would be fantastic. I've also, by the way, had a lot of people comment in YouTube comments about potentially creating a Discord channel instead or in addition to. And, I guess I must be old. I mean, Discord for me has always been the thing that I use to either chat or video chat with my friends that I'm playing games with, and not really used as sort of a forum or message board, I guess. But I don't know why it couldn't be, and apparently it's what all the cool kids are doing. So if anybody wants to set up a Discord channel, feel free, and I'd be happy to plug it. I probably would not be doing that myself and or hosting or moderating it. So anyway, if you've done so and you want to get the word out, let me know, and we can spread the word. Something that I have not been mentioning, and I have meant to for several weeks, and I continue to forget. I used to do all of the math for my episodes manually. I figured out the formula to calculate numbers, damage based on armor class and plus hit chance and crit chance and all of those kinds of things. And I would calculate them manually, wanting to create a tool, never having the time to do so. And then one day I discovered that it had already been created. And there's a guy that goes by the name of Ludic, I believe it is, on the Giants in the Playground forums. I'll put the URL here. Maybe I'll try and link it in the show notes as well for those watching. But you can find it. It's this DPR calculator. It's fantastic. It's a very powerful tool. It lets you, DPR, damage per round, sorry. It lets you calculate what your anticipated average damage might be based on enemy armor class, based on the d8s that you're rolling, and it accounts for all kinds of things, not just your plus to hit, but things like, are you using the Great Weapon Master fighting style, and when should you turn that on at the plus 10 damage, minus 5 to hit, or do you have Elven accuracy, and how does that impact? I mean, there's lots of cool bells and whistles and tools, and it's very powerful, and I use it when I'm crunching my own numbers, and you should too. So check it out. Giants in the Playground, Ludic or Ludich, DPR calculator again. I'll try and make sure that I put the URL in the show notes for today. So I wanted to give credit there. Also, an errata that I wanted to kind of make mention of from the last episode, the Bladesinger 2.0. It's not a huge errata, but when I talked a lot about animate objects and mentioned that, you would need your bonus action every turn to sort of tell your animated coins or whatever it is that you are using. It could be a +1 ammunition. It could be +1 daggers, as somebody's mentioned, and that might help you overcome the sort of resistance to magical, non-magical attacks that you might run into. Again, that's a little bit gamey, so make sure you talk that over with your dungeon master if you want it to work that way. But anyway, it requires your bonus action to instruct the animated objects to do something, but they will continue to do that thing until the task is accomplished. So you could potentially free up your bonus action by saying, attack that guy until he's dead. Or, and then when he dies, you'd have to maybe use a bonus action to switch targets. Or maybe even, as someone pointed out, I'm not sure who it was, Shirak, maybe. Anyway, attack all of my visible enemies until they are all dead, or something like that. Again, talk it over with your DM, make sure that they're cool with, how you're planning on doing this and if it's actually going to work in game like you want it to. But a great suggestion that would potentially free up your bonus action going forward, making an already arguably overpowered spell, animated objects, even stronger. So keep that in mind. Okay, for today, I'm calling an audible. My plan, as I talked about last week, I think, was to have the episode today sort of be updating all of the rest of my episodes on, based on Tasha. So how has Tasha's Cauldron of Everything changed everything that I've done from Bladesinger 2.0, well, from Bladesinger on, because I did the first 6, then I did Bladesinger. Today I was going to do the rest. I was working and researching and crunching numbers and kind of updating everything, and every build was pretty much 2 or 3 paragraphs worth of kind of things to talk about. And the Beastmaster was like 3 pages of single-spaced notes at a 10-point font. And I just realized, the Bladesinger changed a lot, and it deserved its own episode. And arguably, the Beastmaster has changed even more. Now, I was hesitant to dedicate an entire episode to the Beastmaster because it seems to be one of my least popular episodes as far as viewers and listeners goes. But then I thought, that might not necessarily be because nobody likes the Beastmaster or cares about the Beastmaster. It might just be because everybody sort of knows, it's sort of common knowledge that the Beastmaster is, or at least was, the weakest, if not the weakest subclass in all of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And so they weren't interested because they knew no matter how hard I tried and how creative I got with it, that I wasn't going to be able to make it awesome or as great as they wanted. And that kind of ended up being true. Outside of level 17, it underperformed despite my best efforts, right? And so then I thought, though, that maybe there's actually a lot of people out there who secretly are harboring this desire for the Beastmaster to be all that it could be and all that they want it to be, and have that lingering question: is it fixed? Did Wizards do enough to improve it with the changes that they made, or at least the optional features that they gave Rangers and Beastmasters in particular with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything? And if so, what does that look like? And so I feel like I need to do a full episode on it, and so that's what we're going to do today, episode 20, Beastmaster 2.0, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope that you're excited about it, and I think there's a lot of really cool and interesting things to talk about. Now, before I get into the build, I have a couple of bones to pick, or at least, some things that I need to talk about. So, Wizards of the Coast, the makers of Dungeons & Dragons, they obviously heard the feedback, right, about the Beastmaster, and it was loud and clear, I think. It's underpowered. There's lots of problems. Forcing the Beastmaster to choose between them making an attack or their animal companion making an attack was crappy, right? And it made the character fairly weak. When it dies, you didn't have an easy way to bring it back from the dead, outside of like a revivify spell or something, and that is tough, right? There were a lot of things that were challenging about it, and I think that Wizards not only heard the feedback, but definitely put their best effort into making changes accordingly. Before I get into the companion stuff, let me talk about some of the other changes that happen with the Ranger in particular that I think do a pretty good job, at least some of them, to fix some of their problems and weaknesses, right? So you used to get Natural Explorer. I mean, it's still an option, but it was great in very specific situations, particular campaigns that are maybe going to be focused on one terrain type, things like that, but it was kind of worthless otherwise. And they replaced that with an option, or at least now you have the option to take Deft Explorer, which I think is a huge upgrade. It's a lot more universally useful. You get things like double proficiency bonus in one skill, akin to a rogue or a bard's expertise. You get additional languages. You get later you get extra walking and swimming speed and climbing speed, and even eventually some like temporary hit points. So really nice change. Favored foe, though, bothers me. So you normally would get favored enemy, right? And that's great in specific situations if you need to know things about an enemy type or track an enemy type. That was great. Otherwise, not very useful. So they replaced it with favored foe, or gave you the option to take favored foe instead. But the problem with it is it's not very good, and I can't imagine using it much outside of early levels. It gives you an extra D4 of damage. It's like Hunter's Mark. As a bonus action, you sort of cast it. It's not a spell, but it does require your concentration. You put it on an enemy, and then when you hit that enemy going forward, just once per turn, so not every time you hit them like Hunter's Mark, but once per turn when you hit them, you get to do an extra D4 of damage. And that's nice if you don't have any spell slots, or if you haven't learned Hunter's Mark yet. But like, you can't transfer it to another enemy when that enemy dies, and you can only use it a certain number of times per day. And so it's just kind of weaker than Hunter's Mark in pretty much every way. And so I just can't imagine ever using it, especially because it requires your concentration, once you get past maybe level 2 or 3, unless you're like out of spell slots, basically. And so it just feels like, what am I going to do with this? It's just not particularly useful. I'd probably just take the favorite enemy, because at least that sort of has potential for universal application throughout the game. So that confuses me. I'm not sure what the focus group was that sat down and went, yeah, this feels like something that is going to have use for Rangers throughout the game, because I just can't imagine that it would. Anyway, so let's talk about the companions. Okay, Beastmasters now have an option to get a primal companion instead of taking a pet or a companion as per the normal Beastmaster rules. You can essentially magically summon this primal companion. It can be a companion of the land, of the air, or of the sea, and they all kind of have slightly different abilities and stats. And the greatest thing about them is that they can attack on your bonus action now, instead of on just your action. Instead of you having to choose, do they attack or do I attack, you can make them attack on a bonus action. So that's good. That is unquestionably an improvement, right? The thing that bothers me about it is, if you recall, for those who watched my initial Beastmaster episode or listened to it, the thing that made it kind of almost work and get almost competitive from a damage perspective anyway, we were using a giant frog for our companion, and they were grappling and restraining our target, thereby not only controlling them and taking an enemy out of the fight, but then giving us advantage on the attacks that we made. And when you're using the sharpshooter feat, which gives you a +10 to damage on every hit at a -5 to hit, having advantage was really important and really bumped our average damage per round, right? It was a pain because once you hit level 5, you got to make one attack and your beast got to make one attack, right? But at least we were restraining them, taking them out of the fight, and giving ourselves advantage. I don't know why they wouldn't just say, from now on, here's a primal companion option, and any of your Beastmaster companion, no matter whether you're taking a primal companion or a giant frog or a poisonous snake or a wolf or whatever, they can now make an attack on your bonus action. I don't know why you limit it to just the primal companion. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It seems like going halfway there, recognizing the problem, kind of going halfway there, but not making a full fix. And I don't know, maybe it has to do with them feeling like if they did that, they would have to reprint the player's handbook or something. But they make errata and update and changes and additional rulings and things all the time. Anyway, confusing to me, kind of bothers me. The other thing that is problematic with the bonus action bit is, the pinnacle of ranged weapon damage was getting to level 17 and finally being able to take 5th level spells, which is the highest spell slot for rangers and the highest spells, right, for rangers. And the spell Swift Quiver was sort of this quintessential ranger spell. You have arrived, and now when you make weapon attacks with a ranged weapon and you have Swift Quiver active, it let you take 2 additional weapon attacks as a bonus action, which really increased damage and was a nice, like, wow, I hit level 17, I'm super powerful now. But if you're a Beastmaster, you basically don't take Swift Quiver. You could, but then your beast companion doesn't get to make any attacks because you're using your bonus action for Swift Quiver. So it kind of says, well, you got to choose one or the other. And that feels bad to me. And feels like maybe an oversight. I don't know. Not a lot of people get to level 17. Maybe it's not as big a deal as I'm making it out to be, but it just feels like, I guess I don't use Swift Quiver, or I don't use my pet. I got to choose, right? As far as the primal beasts themselves are concerned, they're not half bad. They actually scale better than previous companions, which is nice. Their AC goes up, their hit points go up, their plus to hit, and their damage all scale with your level or your stats. Though, again, I don't know why they couldn't just say, from now on, all companions scale in this way with your level or your stats. Why make that specific to primal companions? I don't know. It feels weird to me. But here's the thing that just it's a thorn in my side. Their plus to hit scales with your spell attack modifier, and that frustrates me to no end. Why not your attack modifier, or maybe your proficiency bonus or something? So now what it does is it forces you as the Beastmaster to choose. Do I want to do more damage, or do I want my bestial companion to do more damage? Because thanks to feats and the way that characters scale and magic weapons and just the way that the game works, basically the ranger is always going to be doing more damage than their bestial companion. Therefore, it sort of, if you're concerned about damage, it sort of forces you to sort of sacrifice your pet's power for the sake of your own, and that until late game, right? Until your dex is capped and you can start putting points into your wisdom score, they're going to have a really lousy plus to hit, and that feels bad. Here's the irony of all of this. The new Summon Beast spell that's available thanks to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, is really good, and it's really strong, and it's better than the Beastmaster's summoned bestial companion, primal companion, primal beast. Sorry, and because their stats are better, they do more damage, and they get to make an attack just at a verbal command from you. It doesn't require your action. It doesn't require your bonus action. And it's available to all rangers and some other classes too. And it just is like, if any ranger can summon sort of this bestial companion of sorts anyway, that's better than me as a Beastmaster, my bestial companion, it feels like a snub, maybe. Not a slap in the face, we'll call it a snub. And that's a bummer, right? I just feel like the Beastmaster should maybe have the strongest bestial companion option because they're a Beastmaster. I mean, the good news is any ranger can use Summon Beast, including the Beastmaster, and so I guess the argument is, well, look, I have a bestial companion and a summoned beast. I am the master of the beasts. I am the true Beastmaster. I mean, heck, you could even take the Find Familiar spell like we talked about in my last episode, in the first Beastmaster episode, and now you got 3. And you are just a menagerie of animal companions, and that would be cool and fun. All right, so after all of that whining and complaining, I'm not usually this negative, I know, and I love Wizards of the Coast, and I'm not trying to bash them, because at the end of the day, this is still a big, big buff to the Beastmaster. They are, in fact, as you probably know or at least assume, a lot stronger. I didn't know, frankly. I looked at first and I was like, but then I crunched the numbers and I went, all right, I better do Beastmaster 2.0 because they are a lot better, especially at the early and mid game. But even late game, they're stronger. Just when you hit level 5 and you're able to make 3 attacks in a turn, 2 for you and then 1 for your primal companion, it's just better, right? Not rocket science. Even though you're not getting the advantage that your giant frog was giving you, having an extra attack is better than advantage, it turns out. Also, of course, when you hit level 11, well, we'll get into that. There's lots of cool things and things to talk about why and how this character is now more powerful, and what their damage looks like. So we'll get into the level by level build. Just like Bladesinger 2.0, I'm not going to assume that you have seen my first Beastmaster episode, and I'm not going to say you got to watch that, and I'm just going to skim over it. So a little bit of this will be repetition if you've seen and are familiar with that episode or the Beastmaster in general. But I'm not going to assume that you've watched it. We're going to go level by level. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. So let's jump in. All right, level 1. For your race, I'm going to recommend Custom Lineage. Big shock. Now, it doesn't have to be elfy. We actually are not going to have a reliable source of advantage, unfortunately, in this build. So Elven accuracy isn't super important for us, unless you're playing with a group who is going to somehow reliably be giving you advantage. But so make your custom lineage look and act and be whatever you want. But starting with a +2 to dexterity, and then taking a free feat to bump that dexterity by 1, thereby letting you start with an 18 dex, because we're point buying to 15, right? Plus the benefits of that feat. It's really difficult to beat that from a numbers standpoint. And by the way, I've heard some comments and seen some feedback on, of people saying, going variant human or custom lineage isn't all that great. The free feat isn't as good as, because what you're giving up is a +1 or maybe even a +2 to another stat, if you were to take a different race, and, a nice racial perk, right? Or perks. My response would be, as always, if you want to play a different race, you absolutely should, by all means. And, that said, when a build is dependent or greatly enhanced by a feat to maximize damage or tankiness or supportiness, healing, whatever it is that we're trying to optimize for, getting a free feat at level 1 is going to put you so much further ahead of the power curve than non-free feat takers at early level, right? Now, yes, typically, depending on how you build the character, by level 8 or 10 or 12, a lot of the time, if you were to take a different race, a lot of the time that curve might even out, right? The non-free feat taker, once they finally can get that and get their stats up or whatever, might sort of match and maybe even surpass somehow the variant human or custom lineage character. But to me, so much of this game, for so many of us, is played from levels 1 to 10 or 12 or 13, right? I would say the vast majority of Dungeons & Dragons content, at least official Dungeons & Dragons created by Wizards of the Coast content, happens pre-level 14, right? That's not to say there isn't plenty of homebrew and there's, things to do that take you beyond that and things, but I think so much of us mostly play the game at kind of the early and mid levels. And so when we're talking about character optimization, like getting a jump on our power curve, power spike is so important, right? I want my character to be powerful out of the gate, and not get there eventually. And so that's kind of, I guess, the primary reason for almost always taking, a character with a free feat. Now, of course, Tasha's has really opened the door for taking other races because of the fact that they've said, you can apply the stat bonuses, the ability score bonuses, to whatever abilities you want, as long as your dungeon master approves of it. So, take a +2 and a +1 in whatever stats are important to you, and be an Aarakocra who get to fly for free. That's amazing, right? It is. And hill dwarves get an extra hit point per level, plus a +2 and a +1. And satyrs get they get advantage against, spell attacks and spell effects. That's huge, right? And a +2 and a +1. So, again, take the race that you want, that speaks to you and that feels cool and that feels powerful, and know that if you're not getting a free feat, the numbers early on might not be as hyper optimized as they could be, but at the end of the day, that's okay. And you need to play what feels cool and unique and fun to you. I just tend to go with the free feat because it generally makes us look better early on, and kind of smooths and evens out that power curve. And again, so much of us play so much of this game at the early to mid game. So that's kind of my little soapbox there, and I will get off it now. Speaking of the free feat that you should take as this character, I would probably go with Piercer, the new feat from Tasha's. It gives you a +1 dex or strength, but we're taking dex, of course. And so just some nice little perks. Once per turn, when you hit with a weapon that does piercing damage, which we always will be, you get to re-roll one of the dice. And so if you roll a 1 or maybe a 2, you can re-roll that and bump your damage a little bit, which is great. And then if you crit them, it does, it lets you roll an extra die. So, if you crit, it's like the barbarian, the brutal critical or the half orc racial, right? When you get a crit, you get to roll 3 dice basically instead of 2, right? So that's cool, and it's going to be a nice little damage bump. Plus, give you extra dexterity, and now you get to start with an 18. ability scores, speaking of, so we're going to point by, as I always assume. If you roll, awesome. But anyway, 15 dex, +2 for your custom lineage, +1 for your feat, so you're at 18. I'd go 14 wisdom. You got to have at least a 13. And wisdom is actually going to be pretty important for us, for our sustained damage, thanks to the companions, and that will be both summoning and conjuring and things. 14 constitution, because everybody wants hit points, and maintaining concentration is important. And then whatever else floats your boat. As far as equipment goes, in true Legolas fashion, we're going longbow all day for our entire career. Probably pick up scale mail for now, as opposed to leather armor. It's better by 1 AC, but thanks to our high dex, as soon as you can get some studded leather armor and or your dexterity gets to 20, then you probably want to switch to light armor at that point. It'll be better off. You have to choose between favored enemy and favored foe. And as I've already ranted about a little bit, I'd probably go stick with favored enemy, because I just don't know that you get a lot out of favored foe unless you're just really concerned about your level 1 being strong, and or level 2 when you run out of spell slots, or 3 when you run out of spell slots. But beyond that, I can't imagine you really ever using favored foe. Favored enemy is kind of nice. Deft Explorer, though, I would definitely take, because of all of the cool features that I mentioned before. At level 2, you get a fighting style, and we're taking archery. It's so strong, and we're making ranged attacks. But +2 to hit when you are constantly getting a -5 to hit at +10 to damage, thanks to the sharpshooter feat, which we'll be taking soon, is just really, really good. No explanation needed, I guess. You do get spells now. So you have first level spells. Obviously, you're going to take Hunter's Mark. It requires your concentration. You cast it as a bonus action, and then every time you hit that enemy that's marked with a weapon attack, it does an additional d6 of damage. Unfortunately, that does not apply to your bestial companion. That would be cool. One other spell that I'll mention, Rangers, thanks to Tasha's, now get Entangle, which was a druid spell previously only. And there's a case to be made for using it. It requires your concentration, but it's a 20-foot square that restrains enemies, basically. Plants grow up and entangle vines, things. Restrains enemies, which means that you and your friends, for that matter, get advantage on attacks against them, if your enemies, if they're restrained. So against higher enemy armor class targets, especially if they kind of have a low strength, because it's a strength save to get out of it, it might be better than Hunter's Mark, getting advantage. Especially because you're disabling them, they're not attacking you and hurting you, and your companions are getting advantage, so it's great. The drawbacks are it takes an action to cast, so you're not making any attacks when you cast it. And again, like I say, they need to make a strength check to get out against your pretty relatively low difficulty check, because your wisdom score is only a 14, so your DC is only a 12 for them to get out. Most enemies have a decent, strength save, so it might not be super effective. But if they're low strength targets and or high AC targets, and or you just really need to lock something down, keep it in mind as a decent option. At level 3, you get new. So Tasha's came out with a new optional feature for Rangers called Primal Awareness. That replaces Primeval Awareness. And again, this is just another example of Wizards really going, the Ranger was just a little too niche, and outside of sort of very specific environments and enemies, they didn't have a lot of utility, and so they're trying to change that, and I think this is a good one. It basically gives you more spells that are considered Ranger spells. They're free to you, and you can even cast them once per day without spending a spell slot, which is great. And they're utility focused, so like things like speak with animals and commune with nature and stuff like that. But that's great, right? It feels very rangery, and sort of has more universal application than Primeval Awareness did, in my opinion. So pick that up at level 3. And then, of course, you get your Ranger archetype, and we're going Beastmaster. And you get your Primal Beast. Definitely go with the Primal Beast and not the old school Giant Toad or Giant Poisonous Snake method. You get to choose, as I've said, a beast of the land, air, or sea. And the nice thing is you can swap them out at a long rest. So if you're about to get on a ship and have a multi-day voyage or something, great, swap it out for a beast of the sea, and now you've got a little dolphin that's following you along or whatever. That's cool. I'm just going to assume that we're going with the land version. They do slightly more damage per attack, and they do get a nice, cool little charge feature, which says that, if they move 20 feet before making an attack, if the attack hits, they get to do an extra d6 of slashing damage, and then they might be knocked prone if they fail a strength save. That's great, except for since you're a ranged attacker, you don't want them to be knocked prone because then you'll have disadvantage on the attack. But anyway, it's not going to happen a ton. Again, your spell DC isn't big, but they do still get the extra d6 regardless if they make the save or not. Word of warning, probably don't rush in, make that attack, and then have your companion turn around and back up so that on the next turn they can do the same thing, because then they're likely to take an attack of opportunity from the enemy, and they don't have a ton of hit points. 5 plus 5 times your ranger level, right? So they might die. So be careful. And if you're concerned about the well-being of your animal companion, just go ahead and take the Beast of the Sky. They, like lots of other flying creatures, get the flyby feature, which means they can swoop in, make an attack, and then fly away without taking an opportunity attack. It'll keep them safer. They do slightly less damage, but it's very minimal. I think it's like 1 point of damage less. They don't get the charge, so I guess if you're counting that, they don't get that too. But keep them safer. So anyway, consider it. I'm going to assume when I'm crunching the numbers that you're using a Beast of the Land. Right now, that they use, again, like I said, your spell attack modifier to hit. So right now it's just a +4, which is not very good. But when they hit, they do a d8 plus 4 slashing damage, which is as much as you. If you hit. Okay, not really, because you're using Hunter's Mark, but still, it's good. At level 4, you get an ability score increase for feat, and I'm going to recommend that you take Sharpshooter. And again, when you use Sharpshooter, it lets you do things like ignore cover of enemies, but most importantly, if you want to, you can turn on your Sharpshooter feature and do an extra 10 damage every time you hit them with a ranged weapon attack at the cost of a -5 to hit. And we're generally going to be using this until we get to very high enemy armor classes. By the way, when you look at the graphs that I have, so if you look at the numbers and they kind of go down for, enemy armor class of 10, you do this much, 11, this much, 12, this much. And the cell where it makes sense to turn off the Sharpshooter feature is always in yellow, for those who don't know. So that kind of indicates to you, when you get to an enemy armor class of 18, stop using the Sharpshooter feature and start just normal attacking, and your average damage is going to be better. So check that out. Level 5 is a huge level for us. So we get extra attack, and hooray, we get to make 2 attacks, and our animal companion, our primal companion, gets to make 1. So now we get 3 attacks in a turn, which feels great. And we get 2nd level spells. So we are going to be going with Summon Beast for our concentration from here on out. Rest in peace, Hunter's Mark. Now you have 2 pets. Your proficiency gets a bump at level 5, so both of your pets, both of your companions now, they both use your spell attack modifier to hit, so that's a +5. So it's a little bit better. And this companion does a d8 plus 6 damage. And that's just better than, 2d6, Hunter's Mark, giving you a d6 on 2 attacks. A d8 plus 6 doesn't take a genius to figure out that's more damage on average, even though they're hitting at a slightly lower clip than you are. And if you go, by the way, you also get to choose when you summon a beast, land, air, sea. If you take the land beast, these guys for this spell, if you or your animal companion, for that matter, or any friendly creature is standing next to the enemy that this land beast is attacking, then they get to have advantage on their attacks, and that's really nice. In fact, they're probably going to be hitting more often than you will, even though they're only a +4 to hit, thanks to that advantage. Assuming that you're always having them attack somebody that's standing next to somebody else. So, big bump for us at level 5. At level 6, we get some nice favored enemy and deft explorer improvements. They're good utility. And let's do a damage report. So, I'm assuming that you are making 2 longbow attacks on your turn. Your primal beast companion is getting 1 attack. Your summoned beast is getting 1 attack, so you're getting 4 all in. And that last guy, again, remember, I'm calculating that he's making it with advantage. You are doing, on average, to an enemy with a 10 armor class, 47 damage per round. And against an enemy with a 15 armor class, you're doing 33 damage per round. It used to be, for the record, with my last build, 27 and 20, and that was doing everything in my power to make the build as powerful as possible. We almost doubled our damage. So hooray for us. We're now comfortably in the middle of the pack compared to other sustained damage builds that I've done. And you're living your best Ranger, Beastmaster, Legolas life. And by the way, I didn't even mention this, but one perk about the Primal Beast companion is that it can take essentially whatever form or shape you want. And so now you also have the added benefit of not having to have a slimy, warty frog hopping around, croaking, and you can have the wolf that you always dreamed, or the panther, or whatever other cliched archetype that just really fulfills your Beastmaster desires. At level 7, you get a Beastmaster feature called Exceptional Training, which lets your pet take the dash, disengage, or help action as a bonus action, which you could already do because you have a primal beast and they can basically take any action as a bonus action. Seems like they might have needed to rework some of the other Beastmaster features in light of Tasha's. Anyway, at least now their attacks are considered magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance to non-magical attacks. So that's good. At level 8, you get an ability score increase, and I would recommend capping your dexterity. So now you have a 20 dex. Happy days. At level 9, you get 3rd level spells. I'm going to recommend switching from Summon Beast to Summon Fae. I talked about Summon Fae a lot last episode with Bladesinger, and Bladesinger really only used Summon Fae for a few levels, but you are probably going to use it for the rest of your career. Now, you can stick with your Summoned Beast if you want. It's not a lot less damage, but the Fae just is a little bit more damage per round. Keep in mind, as I mentioned, that you do get you do get to choose your Fae's personality. This is my favorite thing about this spell. It's adorable. So they can be tricksy, mirthful, or fuming. And let's see, mirthful lets them potentially charm an enemy, which is great. Fuming is going to give them advantage at least on their first attack that they make in the turn. And so that's great, obviously, for sustained damage, and that's usually what I assume you're going to be doing. They can go tricksy, though, as well. And somebody pointed out in the comments to the Bladesinger episode 2.0 last week that this could be really good because they get to cast darkness in just a 5-foot cube, little 5-foot area. Potentially, obviously, there are things, right? You could go fighter level 1. This was the suggestion. Go fighter level 1. Take blind fighting as your fighting style, new fighting style as per Tasha's, that essentially lets you, it's not devil's sight, but if you can't see them but they're within 10 feet of you, then you can see them, basically. And so if you're in melee range, hey, guess what? Now they're in darkness and I get to make attacks with advantage because they can't see me, and all of the great things. And if they move to get out of the darkness, maybe I get an opportunity attack against them, although they could just go diagonal and not away, so you might not get an opportunity attack. But if you hit them with Booming Blade, then they're going to take damage for moving, right? Lots of great synergies there, worth considering. Here, not so much, because your pets, who are melee, can't see them if they're in darkness, so they're not going to be able to, they're going to have disadvantage trying to attack them. And that's going to be problematic. You could potentially take blind fighting and then they get in darkness and now you get advantage on attacking them, but not with blind fighting probably, because that only works at 10 feet out. So you're going to need something more like Devil's Sight or something, and that gets complicated. So, probably not as good an option. I would just stick with Fuming, give your pixie or whatever fey creature adorable fuming Tinkerbell. They don't have to be adorable. They could be a hideous, ugly fey. But in my mind, they're adorable. One note. Conjure animals, the spell Conjure Animals, might be stronger here and throughout, frankly, as the use of your concentration. As a reminder, I talked about this in episode 10, it was sustained damage per round spells. It lets you summon 8 animals, and of a variety of challenge ratings, and 8 is a lot, and could potentially give you a lot of extra attacks on your turn. The problem with the spell is it's going to be heavily dependent upon your table and your dungeon master. So at some tables, the DM might just let you choose what animals do you want to conjure. At others, the DM's going to decide, or maybe they'll roll on a table or something like that. If you could get 8 elks every time, then it's going to be better damage, and you should do it. But if you're going to sometimes get 8 kittens, then that's going to suck, and it will feel like a wasted spell, and it will be hilarious, but it will not be good for your damage. So, work that out with your DM, figure it out. If they're going to let you choose, or they're going to consistently give you, good options, then you're going to want to use that probably over Summon Fae. Otherwise, it's hard, obviously, to quantify that and to put it into a graph or a spreadsheet, because I don't know what animals you're going to get, and that's going to make it swing wildly. So I'm assuming Summon Fae. Same is true once you hit level 13 and you get Conjure Woodland Beings. But I'm warning you, if you try to summon 8 pixies and make them cast Polymorph on all of your enemies and totally ruin your Dungeon Master's encounter, then they're going to hate you and you probably never get away with it more than once. So be warned. Damage report at level 9. So again, you get 2 attacks. Your with sharpshooter, right? 1 for your primal companion and 1 for your Fae. And against an enemy with an armor class of 10, you're going to average 57 damage per round. Very nice. And against an enemy with an armor class of 16, you're going to average 39 damage per round. Again, right in the middle of the pack. Maybe slightly lower than average of the pack, but comfortably in the middle and way better than dead last, which is what my Beastmaster build was before compared to other sustained damage builds. At level 10, you get a Deft Explorer feature improvement, assuming you went Deft Explorer as a new option. It's fantastic. You get temporary hit points as an action. So D8 plus something, your proficiency bonus, your hunter level. And you get to do that a number of times per, as per your proficiency bonus per day. That's awesome. A nice little buff for you. And when you take a short rest, you get to cure 1 level of exhaustion. And I know there are some synergies here that I have not taken the time to think about. Maybe multi-class as a Berserker Barbarian. A strength-based melee weapon-using ranger as a Berserker Barbarian who is always getting exhaustion and curing it. I love it. I'm going to look at it. Also, there is a new option for you as per Tasha's here called Nature's Veil, which is a new feature. It lets you magically go invisible as an action, proficiency bonus times per day. And that's way better than hide in plain sight, which you used to have access to, which would take 1 minute. You're basically camouflaging yourself. It would take 1 minute. You have to have like mud and leaves and twigs, and then it just gives you a +10 to your stealth checks unless you move or do anything. So I get it. That's super rangery. You're commando. But this is not super useful. So good job, Wizards of the Coast, Nature's Veil. Awesome. At level 11, here we go. Now, when you command your beast to attack, this is a Beastmaster feature that you have always had access to, right? When you command a beast to attack, it gets to make 2 attacks instead of 1. And that's fantastic. There are no restrictions on only if you use, the attack action, or, only if you use your action to do this. No. Your primal companion just happens to attack on a bonus action, and now they get to attack twice. So that is a nice little bump for you. At level 12, you get an ability score increase or feat, but you should probably bump your wisdom because it's going to improve your beast and your summoned fae attacks, and not to mention, your perception and other ranger spells you may be casting. So that's important for us. Go wisdom. At level 13, you get 4th level spells, and that means you're upcasting your summoned fae spell so that they get 2 attacks per turn as well now. Woo-hoo. So you get 2 attacks, your bestial companion gets 2 attacks, your fae gets 2 attacks. You're making 6 attacks in a turn. 4 of them aren't super strong, but still, that's fantastic. So, woohoo. By the way, you could do Summon Elemental instead of Summon Fae. That's a 4th level spell. They would also get 2 attacks. Their attacks are a little bit different. The Fae does a little more damage, but the Elemental has some utility and potential usefulness. Take a look at it if that sounds cool to you. So, damage report at level 13 against an enemy with a 10 armor class. You are averaging 88 damage per round. Look at you. I'm so proud of you. And against an enemy with an AC of 17, it's 61. That's really good. That's a little better than the average sustained damage build that I've done. And again, I've updated the numbers at least up through Beastmaster. I'll get to the rest of them next week. Look at the graphs, check them out. It's interesting to me, hopefully to you also. Righto. At level 14, you get Vanish. It lets you hide as a bonus action, and you can't be tracked by non-magical means. Cool. At level 15, you get a Shared Spells feature, Beastmaster feature. Again, when you cast a spell that targets you, it can target your beast companion, your primal companion as well. It's really too bad that this isn't when any positive spell affects you, it can affect your beast as well. Like, so somebody could cast haste on you and your beast would get haste or something like that. It's when you cast a spell. The best spells I can think of that you would want to use here require concentration. And the reality is you're just better off, in every case that I can think of, using your concentration for a summon Fae. Guardian of Nature would be kind of cool. It would potentially give you and your companion both advantage on all of your attacks, but outside of a really high enemy armor class, you're just better off with the damage you'd get from the summon Fae than you would from having advantage, even though you and your primal companion get advantage. Let me know if you guys have better ideas for how to take advantage of share spells. Comment down below, or better yet, create a thread in the subreddit. At level 16, you get another ability score increase. I'm going to recommend taking Wisdom. Now your Wisdom's an 18, and that's pretty respectable and will be good for a variety of reasons. At level 17, you get level 5 spells. So here's the question. Do you still use Swift Quiver? Would you sacrifice? So Swift Quiver requires your concentration and your bonus action. So that means you would sacrifice both your upcast Summon Fae, because it needs concentration, and 2 pet attacks that require your bonus action, in order to make 2 additional attacks with your longbow, with the sharpshooter feat activated. And the answer is no. It's not even close. RIP Swift Quiver, as I said at the beginning. But yay that Beastmaster is now competitive from a sustained damage perspective. So yeah, probably just use that 5th level spell slot to upcast Summon Fae for a little bit of extra damage. Wrath of Nature is a cool 5th level spell option. It can be some nice damage and control in the right situations. Steel Wind Strike, Conjure Volley, offer some nice one-time sort of multi-target area of effect damage options that are on par with stuff that a wizard could do at level 9. But hey, nice to have if you need them. So, final damage report. Again, we're still doing 6 attacks, 2 for you, 2 for each of your companions, pets. Against an enemy with a 10 armor class, you are doing 94 damage per round. And against an enemy with an 18 armor class, you're doing 67. You might not be breaking that centennial barrier on average, but you'll get there frequently. And you're comfortably in the middle of the pack against other sustained damage builds that I've done, which is great. It's great to be there because you have a lot of great versatility and control and utility that your great weapon master, polearm master, fighter barbarians of the world don't get access to, and they can't compete with, and they don't get to feel like Legolas. So you're awesome. Final thoughts. Despite all of my whining and bone picking at the beginning, yes, the Beastmaster is in a much, much better place post Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, especially pre-level 17, right? They are competitive from a damage perspective. They get more useful utility and spell options and features. And you don't have to rely on a giant poisonous snake or a giant frog to be even close to almost competitive from a damage perspective. All of that said, and I don't want to end on a downer, but here's the worst part about all of this in my mind. From levels 1 to 10, if you really want to get the most damage out of a ranged weapon using Beastmaster, you would actually take the crossbow expert feat at level 1, sharpshooter feat at level 4, and use your action and your bonus action to just make 3 attacks per turn, once you hit 5 anyway. 3 attacks per turn with a hand crossbow every turn, and 2 before that. You would not use your bonus action for pet attacks. You would not use your action for pet attacks. you would just be selfish and be making lots of crossbow attacks, like hand crossbow attacks. And your pet, therefore, would just sit there like a bump on a log, taking the dodge action round after round. They make for some great flavor and fun, and kind of another enemy to soak up damage, maybe. But in the end, there's no way, compared to that build, the crossbow expert feat version, there's no way to get them to do more damage than you would just selfishly taking all of your own attacks every round, until you hit level 11. And then at level 11, when your beast gets 2 attacks per turn as a bonus action, the Beastmaster suddenly becomes basically the worst sustained damage per round ranger archetype. It goes from the worst to the best. And so I suppose that's an understandable trade-off, right? Of course, if I were playing this character in game, being the soulless, number-focused hack that I am, here's what I would probably try and do. Start off as a different archetype, subclass, maybe a hunter, gloomstalker, something like that. Take the Summon Beast spell at level 5 and use it all the time whenever I have spell slots. And in-game, really develop a bond and an attachment with that beast. And, every time I summoned it. And then at level 11, I would try to take advantage of the explicit permission that Tasha's Cauldron of Everything gives to characters, when it says, with your DM's approval, of course, you can change your subclass when you would normally gain a new subclass feature. Now, again, obviously, you'd want to talk this over with your Dungeon Master long before and not just drop this bomb on them, potentially getting a no, A, and surprising them, B, right? So make sure that it would be okay with them if you were to do this. Especially because there might be something you need to do in game, according to your Dungeon Master, in order to make this happen, like go on a special quest, take some time and money to invest in the change, etc. Maybe you think this is overly metagamey, and that's okay if you do and you don't want to do that. If it feels like cheating, don't do it, and that's okay. I love to create characters that feel both powerful and fun and provide lots of great roleplay opportunity. And I've actually, pre-Tasha's, a long time ago, respec'd a character in a campaign once, talking it over with my Dungeon Master and coming up with kind of a plan and a reason and things. And I can tell you that it made for some fantastic roleplay opportunities and gave a really nice character development arc to my character that felt to me like it had maybe kind of plateaued a little bit. So be open to that option. And it can provide for some cool, fun, unique in-game opportunities and experiences, and let you kind of have your cake and eat it too, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? One last thing that I'll mention. There is a build here for a Beastmaster that might prioritize wisdom over dexterity that could be worth looking at to help both you and your pet, have a good plus to hit and decent damage. I'm almost positive that it's going to be less overall damage in the end, but it's an option to consider. So you do now, as per Tasha's, get an additional fighting style option available to you, and it's called Druidic Warrior, and it lets you learn cantrips from the Druid spell list. And you could take Shillelagh. I think I got it right this time. I know I mangled it last time I mentioned this spell in one of my previous episodes. Take Shillelagh, which lets you basically use a quarterstaff or a club and use your wisdom score for your plus to hit and your plus to damage. And now you're not ignoring but not emphasizing dex, you're emphasizing wisdom, maybe even multi-class into Druid to Spore Druid and get a little extra damage per hit. But anyway, you're using a quarterstaff, you're using your wisdom score, for your own hit and damage, and now your summoned companions and your primal bestial companion have good plus to hit scores throughout the game. Again, your own damage would be less. It felt like a totally different build, so I didn't want to get into it, but take a look at it if you want to kind of prioritize wisdom and magic and things, especially, and your beast attacks over your own. It's worth checking out. Thank you. That is our show for today. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. I know this is going to get out a little bit late today, as I had to rearrange some things with my little audible here. And thanks for being patient, waiting as I update the other builds. I've done almost all the work to do that, so I should have no problem getting that out in a timely fashion for next week. So anyway, you guys are amazing, and I love you. Don't forget to check out the subreddit, and maybe there will be a Discord channel coming soon. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. I'm probably not going to push the email anymore because I just don't have time to check that email all that often, and there's lots of emails in there languishing, and I apologize if you're one of those who have sent one to me. But please don't forget to subscribe and like and share and review and all of the things and make comments. We're growing relatively quickly, and I love it, and I'm happy, and so it's amazing. If you guys would like me to take a look at a build that you have in mind, comment, or whether here or Facebook, Twitter, maybe even in the subreddit. I try and check those posts. Let me know the details of what you'd want the build to look like and what the goals for the build would be, and I promise eventually, hopefully, I will do my best to optimize it for you. Thanks so much. Have a fantastic day, and we will see you guys soon.